For decades, Bruce Willis ran across rooftops, faced down terrorists, and delivered lines that became part of our collective memory. He was fearless, unstoppable, larger than life.
Or so we thought.
But one day, the man behind the legend simply began to fade. Not from the spotlight, not from the cameras, but from words, from speech, from the world that knew him best.
There were smiles.
There were public appearances. There were photos of him with family, laughing in golden sunlight. And yet, something was different.
Fans felt it first.
Something in his eyes, in the way he moved, in the subtle pauses of his speech, whispered that all was not as it seemed. Hollywood felt it next. Quiet glances, hushed conversations on sets, rumors brushed away as just age or tiredness. But the truth was far more heartbreaking. This is the story of Bruce Willis, the man who saved us on screen, who made us laugh and cry, who faced impossible odds with grit and charm. And now, the world watches as he faces the most human battle of all.
No explosions. No stunts. Just life. And it's beautiful. And it's devastating.
The goodbye had begun, and none of us were ready. Before Bruce Willis became a household name, before Die Hard or The Sixth Sense, before the fame, the laughter, and the applause, there was a boy from a small town, struggling to find his voice in a world that didn't seem to hear him. Bruce Willis was born on March 19, 1955, in Oberstein, West Germany. His father, David Willis, was an American soldier stationed overseas, and his mother, Marlene, worked in a bank. When the family returned to New Jersey, young Bruce's world was a mix of discipline, love, and quiet uncertainty. He wasn't the confident, wisecracking man we'd come to know. As a child, Bruce suffered from a severe stutter. Words came to him in pieces, tangled and trembling, forcing him into silence more often than not. But even in those moments of frustration, something inside him burned, a need to express, to be heard, to connect.
School wasn't easy.
He was teased, often misunderstood. But Bruce found his escape not in rebellion, but in performance. The stage became his sanctuary, a place where words flowed freely, and the boy who stuttered vanished beneath the spotlight. It was in high school that he discovered something transformative. When he stepped into a character, his stutter disappeared completely. Acting became more than art, it was therapy, liberation, a way to reclaim his voice. After graduation, he drifted through odd jobs: security guard, bartender, private investigator, the kind of blue-collar work that would later define his screen presence. But beneath it all, he carried an unwavering dream: to make it as an actor. He moved to New York City, sleeping in tiny apartments, performing in off-Broadway plays, and waiting tables to survive. Each night, he watched the lights of the city and whispered to himself that one day, those lights would know his name. The world didn't yet know it, but a hero was forming. Not the kind born from comic books or destiny, but from grit, resilience, and an unyielding refusal to give up. And soon, the world would see exactly what that kind of strength could do. It wasn't a blockbuster or an action film that first made Bruce Willis famous, it was a television show. A romantic comedy, no less. In 1985, a relatively unknown bartender from New York walked into an audition for a new ABC series called Moonlighting. The role was meant for a suave, polished detective. Instead, Bruce walked in wearing an earring, with tousled hair and a smirk that seemed to challenge the room. The producers saw something they hadn't expected: charisma. Not the kind you could fake, but the kind that made every word feel alive. When Bruce landed the role of David Addison opposite Sybil Shepherd, it was electric. Their chemistry was raw, real, and unpredictable. He wasn't just acting, he was alive, every line dripping with wit, rebellion, and warmth. Moonlighting exploded into a cultural phenomenon.
Critics raved.
Fans couldn't get enough of the fast-talking detective who refused to play by the rules. Overnight, Bruce Willis went from struggling actor to national sensation. But what made him different was the balance. The humor, the humanity, the vulnerability behind the bravado. He didn't look like the perfect Hollywood star. He looked like us, flawed, funny, and fearless. By the late 1980s, that same everyman charm caught the attention of Hollywood producers searching for someone new to lead a risky, big-budget action film about a cop trapped in a Los Angeles skyscraper. At first, Bruce Willis seemed like the wrong choice. He wasn't a muscle-bound action star. He wasn't a martial artist. He was just Bruce, sarcastic, charming, human. But that's exactly what made him perfect. When Die Hard premiered in 1988, the world met John McClane, and action cinema changed forever. Audiences didn't see a superhero, they saw a man bleeding, limping, and terrified, yet still pushing forward. That vulnerability, that ordinary heroism, became Bruce Willis's signature. The man who once stuttered when he spoke now had the world hanging on every word. And as the lights of Hollywood burned brighter around him, no one, Not even Bruce himself could have predicted the shadows that would one day follow. When the first trailer for Die Hard hit theaters in 1988, few expected the film to become a cultural touchstone. Action movies at the time were dominated by indestructible heroes, larger-than-life figures like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, whose muscles and one-liners defined a generation. Bruce Willis, on the other hand, looked more like your neighbor than a super soldier. Fame doesn't just shine, it burns. After Die Hard, Bruce Willis was suddenly everywhere. Magazine covers, late-night interviews, film offers pouring in from every direction. His name alone could guarantee a box office success. But with that came pressure, and with pressure came cracks. Through the late 1980s and 1990s, Bruce's career soared with hits like Pulp Fiction, Armageddon, and The Fifth Element. He became a global phenomenon, the tough guy with a heart of gold, the man who could make you laugh and cry within the same scene. But the higher he rose, the lonelier it became. Hollywood expected Bruce Willis to always be the cool, confident, bulletproof hero. Yet, away from the cameras, he was simply Bruce, a man searching for peace in a world that refused to slow down. There were moments of exhaustion, of self-doubt. Some films failed to connect with audiences, critics began to question his choices, and whispers of frustration circulated through tabloids. For a man who had built his identity on control and command, those moments of uncertainty hit harder than any on-screen explosion. Still, he never lashed out publicly. He handled criticism with humor, that same half-smile, that same calm tone. But close friends knew, the constant demand to be the hero was wearing him down. Bruce's personal life, too, was under the microscope. His marriage to actress Demi Moore, one of the most glamorous unions in Hollywood, faced relentless public scrutiny. The couple, despite genuine love and mutual respect, eventually divorced in 2000 after more than a decade together. Yet, remarkably, they remained friends. Their focus was always on family, their daughters, and maintaining a bond that transcended fame or headlines. Even amid chaos, Bruce found refuge in the simplest moments, spending time with his kids, cooking, strumming his guitar, or retreating to the quiet of his home in Idaho. He wasn't a man who needed the spotlight, he was a man trying to remember who he was without it. In interviews, he occasionally hinted at this.
"Fame is strange," he once said.
"You fight so hard to get it, and when you have it, you realize it doesn't fill the spaces you thought it would." It was during this period that Bruce began gravitating toward roles that reflected a deeper, more introspective side. Characters who were broken, uncertain, or haunted. Films like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable revealed layers of emotion and vulnerability that audiences hadn't seen before. Behind the action star facade, there was always a quiet man, thoughtful, sensitive, and deeply aware of life's fragility. But even as he sought to reinvent himself, something within him was changing, a slow, invisible shift that no one could see yet. A silence that years later would grow into something far more devastating. Long before Bruce Willis became one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, he was a musician at heart. Most fans knew him as John McClane, but fewer realized that the man who blew up buildings by day was also a passionate blues performer by night. Music had always been his first love, a form of expression unbound by scripts or cameras. In the 1980s, riding the wave of moonlighting fame, Bruce released his debut album, The Return of Bruno. It was part tongue-in-cheek, part genuine homage to the blues and soul music that shaped his youth. The album even featured collaborations with legends like The Temptations and Booker T. Jones. To everyone's surprise, it wasn't a vanity project, it was good. His voice carried a raw, smoky authenticity that felt lived-in real. Songs like Respect Yourself climbed the charts, proving that Bruce could hold his own as a performer outside of acting. But for Bruce, it was never about fame or recognition. Music was where he could breathe. On stage, with his harmonica in hand, he wasn't the star or the action hero. He was simply Bruce, the kid from New Jersey who had once stuttered but found his rhythm through melody. He often performed with his band, the Accelerators, at small venues across the US. There were no bright lights, no red carpets, just the hum of guitars, the laughter of a crowd, and the man himself, lost in the music. For those who saw him perform live, it was unforgettable. There was joy in his eyes, the kind of joy that can't be scripted. As the years went on, Bruce continued to return to music between film projects. Even as he conquered Hollywood, he always carved out time for what truly healed him. It was a quiet rebellion, proof that he was more than the roles he played. In private moments, family members and friends would say that music was his therapy. When life felt too loud, he turned to it. When the cameras stopped rolling, he found himself in those familiar chords. Looking back, those small performances, those nights filled with blues, laughter, and harmony, seem even more poignant now. They were glimpses of a man who knew that life wasn't about fame or fortune, but about connection and joy. Because when the world demanded that Bruce Willis be indestructible, music reminded him that it was okay to be human. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Bruce Willis had become more than an action hero, he was a storyteller. In 1999, he starred in The Sixth Sense, a psychological thriller that would forever change the trajectory of his career. Directed by M. Night Shyamalan, the film revealed a new side of Bruce, quiet, wounded, and deeply human. His portrayal of Dr. Malcolm Crowe, a man grappling with failure and redemption, stunned audiences. It wasn't the Bruce Willis of explosions and shootouts. It was the Bruce Willis of stillness, emotion, and introspection.
The film became a phenomenon.
Critics praised his performance as one of his finest, and Bruce himself seemed renewed. He had found a way to channel his internal depth into his art, connecting with audiences on a soul-deep level. That collaboration with Shyamalan would continue through films like Unbreakable, 2000 and Glass, 2019, both exploring themes of vulnerability and resilience, ideas that felt almost prophetic when viewed through the lens of his later years. Bruce wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was chasing meaning. He began choosing roles that resonated with him personally, from Looper to Moonrise Kingdom, from Sin City to Red. These were characters who were aging, reflective, sometimes broken, but never defeated.
Off-screen, he grew more contemplative.
Friends noted that he spoke less about Hollywood and more about life itself, about the fragility of health, the value of family, and the importance of staying grounded. When he wasn't working, he spent his time with his wife and daughters, often retreating to their home in Idaho, far from the flash of Los Angeles. There he'd hike, play harmonica, and host small family gatherings. It was simplicity that defined him. He once said in an interview, "When I look back, it's not the movies I think about first. It's the laughter. The time I wasted worrying about things that didn't matter. I wish I could tell my younger self to slow down." That sense of reflection began shaping not just his career, but his very being. He was no longer the Hollywood rebel, the tough guy, or the superstar. He was Bruce, a man at peace with what he had built, grateful for the life he'd lived, and quietly aware that the story was entering its final act. Yet, around this same time, subtle changes began to appear. Changes small enough to overlook but significant enough that those closest to him couldn't ignore. The man who had once been so sharp, so quick, so commanding, was beginning to drift into silence. It began softly. Missed lines on set. Longer pauses between takes. At first, no one thought much of it. After all, Bruce Willis had been making films for over 4 decades. Fatigue, stress, and age could explain a lot. But as months went on, something didn't feel right. Directors started noticing he was asking for line prompts more often. Co-stars whispered that he seemed distant, as if his mind was somewhere else. Some chalked it up to burnout, the natural slowing down of a man who had given so much of himself to his craft. But those closest to Bruce, his wife Emma, his daughters, his old friends, began to see something deeper. There were moments when he seemed lost in thought, searching for words that once came effortlessly. Conversations grew shorter. Interviews became rare. The man who had once lit up every room with humor and energy now seemed quieter, more withdrawn. To the public, it looked like he was simply enjoying retirement, a Hollywood legend stepping back to enjoy family life. But behind the scenes, whispers began to circulate. Industry insiders mentioned that Bruce was turning down major roles, that his team was limiting press interactions. Fans noticed too. The sparkle in his eyes was still there, but it carried a softness, as if it knew something the rest of the world didn't. Still, Bruce smiled through it all. He continued to appear in smaller films, spending as much time as possible with his family. He never complained publicly, never explained. The man who once spoke in punchlines now chose silence, and somehow, that silence said more than words ever could. Emma began appearing beside him at public events more frequently, guiding him gently, speaking for him when needed. His daughters posted photos of family moments, walks, dinners, laughter, but the captions hinted at something deeper: gratitude, togetherness, love. It was as if everyone around Bruce knew that time was changing. The hero who had faced every imaginable danger on screen was now facing something far more human, far more profound, something he couldn't fight with fists or courage. And while the world hadn't yet learned what was happening, those closest to him already felt it, the quiet before a storm that would break hearts across the globe. Hollywood thrives on noise, premieres, interviews, flashing cameras, and endless chatter. But in Bruce Willis's world, silence had begun to take over. Film by film, year by year, his once commanding voice was heard less often. There were no new interviews, no red carpet speeches, no late-night appearances. His presence was still powerful, but quieter, almost fragile. Directors began adjusting scripts, simplifying dialogue, and shooting shorter days. Crews who had worked with Bruce for decades noticed he was struggling to remember lines or cues, something unthinkable for the man who once delivered pages of dialogue with charm and precision. Still, no one spoke about it publicly. Out of respect, his team and co-stars stayed silent. There was an unspoken agreement in Hollywood. Everyone sensed something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it aloud. On set, Bruce was always professional. Even when confusion flickered across his eyes, he'd smile through it, sometimes cracking a small joke to lighten the tension. But there was a sadness too, a distant awareness that something inside him was changing. His wife Emma began accompanying him to shoots more often. She would quietly observe from behind the camera, gently guiding him when needed. To outsiders, it looked like love and support, and it was. But to those who truly knew them, it was also protection. Something in Bruce's world was closing in, slowly, invisibly, and everyone around him felt it. The world didn't see it coming. It began with a quiet post. No press conference, no interviews, no flashing cameras. Just a few lines shared online by his family, written with the tenderness of people carrying something too heavy to say aloud. There it was, in black and white. Bruce Willis, the man who had run barefoot across broken glass in Die Hard, who had made generations laugh, cry, and cheer, was stepping away from acting. Not because he wanted to, but because something inside him was slowly taking away the very thing that made him who he was. The statement spoke of health issues, of communication struggles, and of aphasia, a word few had heard before that day but would never forget after. For millions, it didn't register at first.
It didn't make sense.
Bruce Willis, the action star, the wisecracking cop, the man who always found a way out, was losing his ability to speak,
To perform? To connect?
The shock rippled through Hollywood like a wave. Actors stopped in their tracks. Directors stared at their phones in disbelief. Late-night hosts struggled to find words. Within hours, tributes began flooding social media. Co-stars posted photos from old sets. Fans shared stories of the first time they'd seen Die Hard or The Sixth Sense. Some wrote that Bruce had been their childhood hero, others simply said, "Thank you for the memories." It wasn't just the news that broke hearts. It was the realization that the man who had spent his life speaking to the world through his art was now losing his voice. The silence that followed was unlike anything Hollywood had ever known. Because this time, Bruce Willis wasn't playing a role.
This was real.
The news of Bruce Willis's retirement echoed across the planet like a collective sigh. For a moment, the internet slowed down, not with gossip, but with grief. Clips from Die Hard, The Fifth Element, and The Sixth Sense flooded social media. Fans in every corner of the world posted scenes that had defined their youth. John McClane crawling through air vents, whispering yippee-ki with that crooked grin. Malcolm Crowe whispering, "I see dead people." People didn't just remember the roles. They remembered where they were when they first saw them. Living rooms, movie theaters, late-night reruns, Bruce had been a constant presence in their lives. Actors who once stood beside him on set spoke softly in interviews. Samuel L. Jackson said, "Bruce wasn't just an action hero, he was one of the kindest, funniest men I've ever worked with." Kevin Smith, who had famously directed him years before, admitted through tears, "I wish I'd told him more often how much his work meant to me." It wasn't just Hollywood mourning, it was everyone. Taxi drivers in New York, bartenders in Berlin, firefighters in Sydney. People who had watched Bruce play the everyman hero now felt as though they were losing a friend. In that moment, Bruce Willis stopped being a movie star. He became a memory, one that millions promised never to forget. Few divorces in Hollywood ever end in friendship. Bruce Willis and Demi Moore defied that rule. When the news broke, Demi didn't issue a carefully polished press release. She shared a photo, Bruce smiling with their 3 daughters, arms wrapped around them in warmth. Her caption was simple: "We are a family, through everything." Those 6 words said more than any headline ever could. Behind the scenes, Demi had been visiting Bruce frequently. They would sit together in the same living room where they once raised their children. There were no scripts, no red carpets, only shared history and quiet understanding. Friends close to them described it as a circle completing itself. The love that once began on movie sets like Mortal Thoughts had evolved into something purer, compassion. Demi's presence reminded the world that love doesn't always disappear when relationships end. Sometimes it transforms, and becomes even stronger when tested by pain. She continued to stand beside Emma, Bruce's wife, showing that families can expand, not divide, in times of crisis. Their children, Rumer, Scout, and Tallulah, became the emotional bridge between them all. Demi's words resonated because they weren't polished statements. They were a whisper of truth, that Bruce Willis, the man behind the legend, was deeply loved. Behind every photograph that the public saw, every smile, every brief video clip, there was a quieter reality. Bruce's days became slower, gentler. Each morning began with sunlight streaming through the windows of their California home, the sound of birds, the clinking of coffee cups. Emma would help him start the day, sometimes humming a tune from the Moonlighting era, and for a second he'd grin, remembering. But there were difficult moments too. Aphasia had begun to blur not only his speech but his comprehension. Conversations that once flowed easily now paused mid-sentence. Some days, he'd lose his train of thought and simply squeeze Emma's hand, letting silence speak for him. Still, there was grace in those pauses. His family adjusted, not out of pity, but out of love. They learned to communicate differently. Daughters used music, touch, and laughter. There were dance sessions in the living room, movie nights where old family films replaced the blockbusters. Bruce still lit up at familiar melodies, the blues songs he used to play on stage, the harmonica riffs that once filled arenas. Even as his words faded, rhythm remained. He'd tap his foot, nod along, smile that same mischievous smile that made the world fall in love with him decades ago. The battle was invisible, but the strength was unmistakable. For Bruce, this wasn't a fight to win, it was a lesson in acceptance. For his family, it was a lesson in cherishing the now. And in that shared acceptance, they found something powerful: peace. Bruce Willis's career was more than filmography, it was emotion in motion. He changed the shape of Hollywood heroes forever. In the late 80s, when muscle-bound giants dominated the screen, Bruce walked in barefoot, literally, in Die Hard. He wasn't perfect, he wasn't indestructible, and that was exactly why audiences loved him. John McClane bled, cried, and limped his way through pain. He cracked jokes when he was terrified. He was human, and that humanity became Bruce's greatest weapon. Then came the versatility: Pulp Fiction, The Sixth Sense, 12 Monkeys, The Fifth Element. Each film was a reminder that Bruce could be funny, tragic, strange, tender, sometimes all at once. Critics called him the everyman star, but those who worked with him knew he was something deeper, an artist hiding behind simplicity. He made complexity look effortless. Even now, his influence echoes. Younger actors cite him as the reason they chose this path. Film schools dissect his scenes. Directors rewatch his performances to study how he balanced humor with heartbreak. But Bruce's true legacy isn't just on screen. It's in the way he treated people, the crew members he remembered by name, the fans he stopped to greet, the humility that never wavered even after global fame. He proved that strength wasn't about showing no fear. It was about showing up, every day, even when the world felt heavy. And that's why, long after the lights fade, Bruce Willis will remain more than an actor. He will remain a symbol of endurance, humanity, and heart. Today, Bruce lives surrounded by love. Not scripts, not cameras, but family. His home is quieter now. There are fewer visitors, fewer calls. But there is warmth in every corner. The scent of morning coffee, laughter of daughters, the occasional bark of a family dog. Some days, Bruce walks in the garden with Emma. He still enjoys the feel of sunlight on his face. He still smiles when he hears his children's voices. Music plays softly in the background, sometimes Frank Sinatra, sometimes something bluesy and slow. It's not a farewell filled with tears or grand speeches. It's a living goodbye, one built from small, beautiful moments. Every photograph shared by his family tells the same story: love in motion.
A kiss on the forehead. A shared laugh.
A hand gently resting on his shoulder. For fans, it's bittersweet to watch. We grew up with his voice filling the screen, confident, strong, defiant. Now that voice is fading, but the man behind it still shines. His story reminds us that life's final chapters don't have to be dark. They can be peaceful, filled with grace and gratitude. The goodbye we weren't ready for has already begun, but it's written not in endings, only in love. Bruce Willis will forever be remembered not just as an actor, but as a man who lived fully, who laughed loudly, loved deeply, and gave the world stories that will outlive him. He taught us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to face it anyway. He showed that strength isn't always physical. Sometimes it's the quiet endurance of those who keep smiling through pain. In the glow of his legacy, millions of fans still whisper his lines, still rewatch his films, still cheer when John McClane shouts his famous words. But beyond the screen, Bruce's real masterpiece is his family. The love that binds them, the unity that inspires millions, the proof that kindness and empathy are the truest forms of heroism. As the curtain slowly closes on his career, the applause doesn't stop. It grows. Because the world knows what he gave, and what he continues to give, simply by existing. Bruce Willis is not gone. He's simply moved from the stage to the hearts of those who loved him. His story isn't about loss, it's about legacy. And long after the final credits roll, one truth will remain. Bruce Willis will always be our hero. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever smiled, cried, or felt inspired by Bruce Willis, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, stories of courage, family, and the beauty of a life well lived. Bruce Willis has given us laughter, tears, and strength through decades of unforgettable performances. Now it's our turn to give something back, by remembering him, honoring him, and spreading his light to others.